feel free to, if you guys want, the invite's always open. Turn your cameras on so we can all make sure that, we're here having fun. There's something exciting that happens when you can see everybody's faces. And then that way, when I'm talking and I see everyone doing this, it makes me realize that I'm being confusing. I'm going to share my screen in just a minute, but I want to recap the story that I told in the email because I think it really illustrates the point for why we're having this meeting today. So again, this a couple months ago, I'm walking to the grocery store, Sprouts. It's where we get our fruits and veggies because they're always cheapest there. So we're going there and there's a guy standing outside with a sign. He's like, hey, I'm looking for work. And you see that all the time. It's a nice part of town. And right behind him, literally, was a gigantic sign in Sprouts grocery store window saying like, we're hiring right now. And it was starting at like $20 an hour. And so if you kind of remove all the hoops that your brain jumps through on like, well, what about this? What about that? And all this stuff, remove all of that. And the takeaway in my mind is, you know what, if that's going on, you need to have a candidate pipeline like yesterday. You need a candidate pipeline. And I was just reading on Twitter this morning, like the amount of job openings that there are right now, how much it surpasses the unemployment is just, it's insane. So it doesn't matter if you are an in-house recruiter, if you're like a small business owner who's going to do hiring, if you work for a staffing company, across the board, everybody should be working on their candidate pipeline and their candidate pool. If at some point in the next year or two, you're going to be hiring anybody. And so it's going to look at a number of different ways. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And it's a big subject. And so hopefully everybody here, no matter what your experience level is within that, you walk away with a couple of action items that you can do. So I'm going to share my screen. And if Monty, if you could just let me know that my screen goes live, just so that I'm not talking to just my face.
Yeah, it's live. You're good.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to pop between a couple slides and then here on LinkedIn just to kind of keep it jazzy. So the tagline, if you will, for today is, you got to break the cycle of feast or famine candidates. And so usually it's feast or famine sales. Today we're doing hiring. So it's candidates. It's the same kind of thing. It's an opportunity either to do business together or to fill a role. So this is the problem that everybody faces when they're hiring is it's like, oh my gosh, we have an open position. And then it's just this boom, you open the doors and now it's like, you got to do tons of work and then you hire them or you don't. And then it feels like feast or famine all the time. And every time you got to hire someone, it's like, oh my gosh, I got to go through those 100 different things again. And it's just something that you dread. And a lot of that's because you didn't build a candidate pipeline. And so moving on here, like I said a minute ago, recruiting, it's a big subject. And today, keeping in mind that it's a whole industry, it's a whole full-time job role at a company. We're going to be keeping it within the swim lane, if you will, to recruiting strategies, specifically on LinkedIn. So obviously there's like Indeed and there's referrals and there's so many different things that you can do for hiring. We're going to stick to recruiting strategies specifically on LinkedIn. A couple points that I want to get through today. And I'm going to try and move fast because no one likes one talking head. So I want to make time for the panelist discussion, open Q&A, but a couple of things that I definitely want to get to. What is a candidate pipeline? I feel like if you're full-time working for a staffing company, you might get that language, but if you don't, then you might go, well, what is that really? What does that really mean? It's very important that you know what a candidate pipeline is because it kind of justifies the reason for doing all the things we're going to be talking about today. So what's candidate pipeline? Strategies to keep that pipeline full. I want to touch on lightly, is LinkedIn Recruiter worth it? Because it's pretty expensive. Finding talent, how do you get them talking? Should you do InMail or Connect? What are the benefits there? Qualifying candidates, call to actions to use and avoid, and then adding candidates to your ATS if we have time. And for those of you who do not know what ATS means, that is an acronym for Applicant Tracking System, which is like if you're in sales, the lingo for CRM, it's ATS. So that's what we've got going on there. All right, let's do, all right. Sorry, one second here. Okay, what's candidate pipeline? I'm actually going to jump over here and look in HubSpot. Now this is CRM, and you're looking at right now a sales pipeline. And in just a minute, I'm going to jump over here and talk about a candidate pipeline. But I feel like it's much more common vernacular to use the word pipeline in the context of sales and marketing. It just my experience. And so this is like a sales pipeline. And I want to spend a moment on here again before we get over here, just to build a foundation. But what happens like in a sales pipeline is, or deal pipeline, is if you got, maybe a lead comes in, right? Lead comes in. Well, what's the next stage? The next stage. All right, maybe there's a discovery call. And then maybe the next stage is there's a strategy. And then you kind of go on and either you get the business or you don't. That's sort of a sale or a deal pipeline. And a lot of times in the hiring process, what a lot of people, whether they're full-time recruiters in-house or a staff company, they don't realize that the same organization should happen at the candidate level. So you should have, just like you would have a sales pipeline, and you go, oh, duh, if we don't have a sales pipeline, deals are going to fall through the cracks. It's the same thing. If you do not have a candidate pipeline, then candidates are going to fall through the cracks. Who is qualified? Who booked an interview? Who's in the second interview? Oh my gosh, how do you manage it all? Spreadsheets, Airtable, oh my gosh, like stab my eyes out, right? And then what about when you, maybe you filled a position, but there were 10 other people who you go, man, we gave them that final offer, that final interview, and I would love to have them on the bus, but they just weren't quite the perfect fit, or maybe someone was just a little bit better. They're a great fit for the culture, but they didn't make the cut this time. Why on earth would you start over and reopen the floodgates the next time that position opens and go through all of that work just to get to final offer or final interview, when you can just circle back to your candidate pool you've kept in touch with and say, hey, you know what? This position's open again. You were qualified. Can we maybe do one final offer, one final interview again, if you're still interested? And so you can kind of see, looking at the big pipeline view, how the organization really helps you stay organized, candidates don't fall through the crack, and then building that candidate pool of people who are already expressing interest really saves you a ton of time. And then when it's time to to fill a position, having that pool, it really, really does break that cycle of feast or famine candidates, because you've already got a pool. That's the whole point of a candidate pool. So a lot of people aren't aware of that, and it just kind of just a little bit of info there. Again, if you're a pro in recruiting, you've probably realized that in the past, but a lot of people haven't. So that's why we say without a pipeline, it's feast or famine candidates. So how to use LinkedIn to fill the pipeline. I'm going to move fast here. We have three kind of broad strategies that we're going to talk about, and we're going to camp out on the third one a little bit more because it involves a little bit more. And in my opinion, it's probably the strongest strategy. So strategy number one, and we'll go through some pros and cons here. So number one is you can just create a job post, right? Obviously, let me just jump over here. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this, what you can do is you've got the little briefcase up here. I feel like no one sees that, but it's there. It's jobs. And you can go, let's jump over here. You can do a job post. The person looking for a job can apply now. This is a job post. Obviously, this is like if you're hiring 101, post a job, right? Pros to that, you can do one free post at a time, big pro. You can pay to do more, or you can just kind of just do one at a time. Another pro is the candidates come to you. It's a big win for doing a job post. A couple cons though, is you have less control over candidate targeting. Oh my gosh, like we'll do a job post and then you're super clear on the requirements, and you read through some of those resumes and you go, why on earth did you apply? Like, come on. And LinkedIn tries to do a good job about automatically filtering stuff, but that's definitely a con, is you have less control over the candidate targeting. Another con is, and this is a really big one for quality of candidates, is your best candidates, they may not be looking. You're going to get a one-off unicorn where somebody got let go and it was just a company thing. It had nothing to do with them. But a lot of times the power players that you want to bring on the bus who are worth hiring, a lot of times they're happily employed, or they're employed, but they're maybe not super actively looking. So that's kind of a con there, is you might not get the best candidates. So that's number one. Number two, you can share that you're hiring in the newsfeed. Pro there is it's free and it leverages the trust and referrals of your network. So if I go here, you can either just go like this and type a text that says, like, hey, we're hiring, or you can go like this because it's so common. LinkedIn actually says, share that you're hiring. See that? Share you're hiring. And you'll kind of fill in, choose the company, title, company, XYZ, post it. So that is a really easy win as well. Again, free. trust and referrals of your network, but the con there is it's minimal reach. I mean, a post in the newsfeed lasts like a day and then it's over. And so it really has a minimal reach, and you got to rely on someone being in the newsfeed to see it, or someone commenting or tagging it. It just has minimal reach. And then the call to action, CTA, isn't as convenient. So if you're in the newsfeed and you see, hey, we're hiring, and if you're maybe kind of looking, then you have to like click it and click and click and click, and then eventually get to the place where you could apply. So the call to action is there, but it's just not as convenient, right? So that's number two. The third one is you find the candidates and you start a conversation. So this is much more proactive. And I honestly think that a good recruiter is doing all three, but this is the one that we're going to camp out on here in a little bit more, because it's a little bit more strategy, a little bit more effort, a little bit more organization, a little bit more things that go into it. So finding candidates and starting a conversation. A pro is you have total control over candidate targeting. Just like if you're using LinkedIn for sales, you find the person, you look at their profile, they look like they're a good fit. Same thing with recruiting. You find the candidate, you look at their profile, you have total control. Major, major, major pro. Another pro is your best employees probably already have a job. Not always, but a lot of times they're going to already be employed. So you don't have to rely on them looking. You are being proactive, finding them, and they already are employed. The hard part there is just making sure that they're a good fit, like actually, and then persuading them to jump board and hopefully not ruffle feathers by poaching someone else's employee. A couple cons for you being proactive about this is it's greater time investment. You have to be organized, and some of you, maybe that's not a con, but for those of you who are not organized, it's a big con. You have to put effort into being organized. Another con is free LinkedIn becomes a little bit cumbersome. And that's kind of a big deal. So let's kind of camp out here. Like I said, job boards, newsfeed posts, they're pretty straightforward. You can kind of just go here and mess around with a job post and figure it out. You can kind of mess around with doing a post that, hey, we're hiring, and that's pretty easy. They're very straightforward. But you finding candidates, like just that one phrase, like you finding candidates, that opens a whole can of worms. Like, how do you find them? Like, how can you use Recruiter or some version of LinkedIn to find people? Starting a conversation, right? Because they're not taking the initiative. They're not applying for a job. You have to get them talking, qualifying them. This is all on you. It's all on your shoulders. Adding them to your ATS. Like, that's a much, much, much larger issue to tackle. And we could literally do like 3 sessions on this. And so it's going to be kind of high level, but I want you to walk away with some action items. So like I said, it's a much more complicated workflow. And I want to kind of break this into 2 pieces. Number one is I want to talk about finding candidates. So again, it's finding candidates and starting a conversation. It's kind of the 2 kind of buckets that we're going to do here. So finding candidates, honestly, you're just probably going to need to pay to play. And I'm going to do this in just a minute. We're going to take a really quick look at Recruiter. This is Recruiter Lite. So if you want to be proactive in finding candidates, like I said, free LinkedIn is probably not going to be enough. It might be if you're only hiring every once in a while, but if it's something that's ongoing and you need to like really build a candidate pool, candidate pipeline, you probably have to pay to play. And so this is why this slide is next, is because the next question people ask always is, hey, like, is Recruiter worth it? So I'll let you decide. Just a couple of bullet points here. It's about $140 a month. Don't quote me on that because it's Microsoft. Their prices only go up. You do have projects, which if you're familiar with SalesNav, it's basically works the same way as lists. You've got saved candidates, which is the same thing as saved leads in SalesNav. The user interface looks a little bit different, but functionally it's almost identical. Same thing with alerts. You get advanced search. You get some InMails, and then you can easily manage your job posts. And so this is kind of what it looks like under the hood. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here because you can kind of mess with this later. But really, when you write up your job description and you're like, all right, we kind of know what the candidate kind of looks like, you have to take all those qualifications and take that work history and think of advanced search and recruiter as a sort of like as a filter layer. So what can we search for in LinkedIn that would be a match on like a resume? And I'm going to just jump over here and show you and then give you a visual. So the most helpful are going to be their current or past title, because that means they actually have the job. Someone can put a skill on their profile and they might just suck at it, right? If they actually have a job that's related to what you're hiring for, they're probably actually, their money is where their mouth is, right? current or past company that they're working for at now or in the past. Yours experience is a really big one. Skills, helpful, degrees can be helpful. And then keywords, but only in conjunction with the above, because remember, keyword is going to be like looking at the whole profile. So sometimes you've got a title or a skill or something that it needs a sort of secondary pass to clean it up, but you're just not sure where it would be on the profile. It could be numerous places. That's the time I'd use keyword. So you've got years experience here. You've got, yeah, I'll let you mess with it. So you can kind of be thinking, you've got this ideal candidate. These are some of the most important search filters. Use these search parameters to find them. And once you do find those candidates, you have to get them talking. And I feel like the getting candidates talking is where a lot of people in recruiting accidentally give recruiters a bad name. It just like, it's the same thing with sales. It's just, I guess, people that suck, right? So it's like, there's always a small amount of people that give everybody else a bad name. And so, how do you get candidates talking? What should the process be there on LinkedIn? And so to explain that, it's actually going to be a much easier to do a playbook. And so bear with me as I change screens again. So this is kind of what we're going to be doing. So we're going to go through this workflow. I'm going to go really fast because I'm pretty close to my time up. So if you are a recruiter, this is for you. If you are an owner looking to hire, this is for you. If you are an in-house talent acquisition person, it's all for you. And so I'm going to kind of blast through this. If you have questions, we can hit them later or drop them in the chat. So kind of step one, you want to get noticed by the candidate. And I'll say here, you might want to tread kind of carefully here if you're looking to hire someone who's working somewhere else, because if you see a competitor engaging with your employees' content, you might go, whoa, that's my employee. What are you doing? Like, you could ruffle some feathers there. And so a lot of recruiters don't like to do that, but if it's appropriate, you could. So you might want to do some actions there to get noticed by them. You can send an invite. And this is where we can talk about, to invite, to connect, or send an InMail. You can leverage both. If you pay for a recruiter, the kind of prompt that LinkedIn gives you there is definitely InMail. And the benefit there is your message gets emailed. The downside there is you don't get the candidate's personal email. There's a bunch of things that you don't get when you send an InMail. So I would say my priority workflow is to send an invite to connect, because then just like, you're building out your candidate pool, let's go like this. Just like you're building out your candidate pool for people who are definitely interested, you can kind of view LinkedIn the same way, where every first degree connection that you make, they're always a first degree connection. You can always pull them up. So you're building almost like your pre-candidate pool on LinkedIn. So I definitely prefer the route of sending an invite over InMail. However, if someone doesn't accept the invite, then you can kind of do a replay and send an InMail, try to start the conversation that way. Let's say the invite's accepted, start a conversation. The next step that you have to have in your mind is, all right, I have to qualify this candidate. And this is where I feel like a lot of people who are in recruiting, they maybe do a swing and a miss, is because they forget that they have to qualify the candidate. And qualifying a candidate is more than, do you have the skills for the job? This is a two-way interview, right? This should be you should approach a candidate with your messaging like, hey, I looked at your profile. There's this position that's open. From what I can tell, it looks like you might be a good fit for it, but I need to know, like, are you happy where you're at? I don't want to step on any toes here. Maybe you're happy where you're at, and maybe you're not. Maybe this isn't a good fit. Would you be open in having an initial conversation to see if this would actually be a good opportunity for you and the company? It's a two-way kind of qualification. And a lot of times people that are in recruiting, it's like do everything you can as quick as possible just to get some faces in the pipeline. And the messaging methodology that comes out is, hey, apply for this job, apply for this job, apply for this job. It's like a sales pitch, but for the recruiter version, right? So what you should do is get the candidate talking and position it like, hey, this is an opportunity. Can we see if it's an opportunity for you? Can we see if you'd actually be a good fit for it? Can we see it? So you got to get them talking. You got to figure out, like, maybe they love where they're at. Maybe there's no pain, or maybe they're like, oh my gosh, I hate being here, or I got laid off. I'm ready for an interview now. But you got to sniff it out. You got to get them talking. You got to figure it out. And then you can actually give a call to action that matches where they're at, right? So they might say no thanks. And the nice thing, if you want the route of connecting, is even if they say no thanks, you're still connected on LinkedIn. 6 months later, something awful might happen to them at work, and bang, you're still connected. right? So an objection now is not a forever objection. It's just not right now, right? So if they say yes, and you can add them to your ATS, and then you can add them to your candidate pipeline. You go through that pipeline process, and then you hire a person. So really briefly on the adding the candidates to your ATS, just because it gets brought up, if you pay for a more expensive version of Recruiter, so let me just do this. If you pay for a more expensive version, if you view a candidate, there's usually a little button that says like add to CRM. It's usually going to sync up with one of the more expensive ones like Bullhorn. If you don't have all that set up and it's very expensive, I hate to tell you, but there's no really easy way to pass candidate information from LinkedIn to your ATS. Most people that aren't tech savvy are going to kind of copy paste it unless you, again, want to work with like a third-party tool that maybe grabs stuff, parses it, and passes it. So just wanted to hit that. That is the workflow. So let's move on here to panelist discussion. So panelist discussion, if we could please kind of keep this to, I'd rather avoid, like the state of hiring in America. I'd rather keep it kind of focused on hiring strategies, getting candidate strategies on LinkedIn so we can kind of stay narrow. And then once the panelist discussion is over, we'll move it into open Q&A. All right, thank you everybody for your time, and I will stop talking and drink some coffee.
Can you share the playbook one more time?
Sure. There you go.
So I'd like to zoom back in to that little red paragraph right there. So I think, as far as LinkedIn goes, what's important for everybody to remember, now, whether you're trying to do sales or whether you're trying to find candidates, this is not a transactional process. And I think that's where recruiting just like jumps off the cliff. It's because there's so much competition for recruiters to just find that person really quickly and to put as many people in front of them as they possibly can, because they're going to get a portion of that person's salary if they're accepted. So if you're in-house, working in-house as a recruiter or in HR trying to find somebody to fill a role, this workflow works fantastically just simply because it's entirely relationship focused. And what you said in terms of this is a two-sided approach. The person that's trying to find a job is going to be interviewing, if you would, or discovering whether or not they want to work with you, just as much as you're going to be trying to decide whether or not that person is good to bring in-house. So, but even for recruiters, transactionally, if you can get out of that transactional mindset to be able to build up a database of people that you can continually go back to, whether you're reaching out through email on a monthly basis, quarterly, what have you, people are more likely to do people or business and pick jobs and stuff with people that they know, like, and trust. So that's definitely important on the sales side and in the recruiting arena. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Nope. Okay, make sure you edit out that dead spot.
I had a quick question, Isaac. This is not my area of strength here at all, but what about passive candidates and what they're calling now open candidates that you can do through LinkedIn so that they can put out a message sort of secretly that they're looking for work without signaling to their own companies, HR or recruiters. Can you talk a little bit about that? I've just kind of heard about that, and it's sort of interesting because I come across a lot of attorneys that are ready to make a move, and yet they don't want to signal, and it gets a little bit complicated and sensitive too.
Yes, and I have not looked for a job in like forever since I started businesses, but
you go into preferences, LinkedIn jobs, homepage, and then you turn something on, and that allows you to put a signal out to anyone outside of your company.
Right, and so do you know off the top of your head, Viveka? So there's open for work, And then there's let
It's not
recruiters
open
know.
for work. So it's not loud like that. It's some sort of they call it passive candidates. Officially, I think LinkedIn refers to it as open candidates.
Isn't it in
And
settings that you go into, Vivica, to change
it
that?
goes into, you go into preferences and then LinkedIn jobs homepage. And I have to admit, I haven't done this. I've just heard about it.
Oh, here,
So I
job
don't
seeking
know.
preferences, job application settings.
LinkedIn jobs, let's see.
No.
So this is a way to just kind of discreetly mark, obviously. that you're-
Signal your interest to recruiters at companies you've created job alerts.
Yeah, I
maybe?
think that's, yep. I think that's it.
This will be applied for companies that you've created job alerts for. Really.
And if you turn that on, somehow you bypass signaling your own HR and
Oh,
or
interesting.
affiliate company recruiters as well. Somehow
yeah, I had
LinkedIn.
I have no idea. No idea.
I just heard about it, so I just thought I'd see if you guys knew that. about that.
There is more likely to engage. Let's see. Oh, I'm pretty sure that there's a filter type for looking for open to hiring,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure on the recruiting side how to grab this data and take action. That's a great question. Anybody else have any?
It
idea
is
there?
open to you, just to say it's open to US, UK, Canada, Australia, not Europe yet.
Yeah, one of the strategies that a lot of recruiters take is just finding people that have open to work. So this would eliminate that, correct?
I think it's more like if you are looking for talent, there are two sort of triggers. One would be open to work, and the other would be that. I have heard mixed comments from people hiring on the open to work, the publicly note like open to work thing, because it's kind of like, do you want to hire someone who's in between jobs? Oh, maybe. I don't know why they're open to work. I don't know why they're unemployed. And so it's a little bit more of a wild card there. Yeah, I think there's just both different trigger notifications. One's public, one's not. Yeah, like Vivica was saying.
I think what you said in that the best candidates are probably working. That's how people go find the best people. They're not currently unemployed, but I think it also depends on the industry too. Like in the tech space, in the tech industry, everybody's working. It's, if you don't have a job in the tech space, I don't know what the problem is. So, all the recruiters are competing for people who already have jobs. So you're trying to find people that are unhappy or wanting to somehow level up, whether it be financially or, work from home or whatever.
I mean, the other thing I just want to add is that now more than ever, you need to make sure that you have an absolutely, if you're recruiting a stellar company page, if you had put that on hold or on the back burner, now is time to ramp that up, because that's where they're going to look for, for content, how you create content that things are, consistent graphics, posts, a voice, a vibe. I mean, that's where this talent's going to go almost first off.
Yeah, it's a great point. And what a lot of companies fail to do is talk about their culture.
Yeah.
In their posts.
Behind the scenes videos, talent love that stuff. New high spotlight, new talent, and ask them to say what they appreciate about being there. I mean, this is something that I think that weighs heavily when they go to your company page and take a look.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, and to kind of just give a visual. So like, let's say Monty is responsible for hiring, and I get a message from Monty. And I go, oh, interesting. So what's Monty about? Like, this is where the rubber hits the road, And so I might creep on the profile before I respond. And then I'll go, all right, well, let's check out the company. What's going on in the company? Yep. And then what do they have going on here? And if I see a bunch of employees having fun talking, like that's part of the culture there, where it's like, it's there, so does this communicate that you're a big deal, that are you a risky company to jump into? Like, what's the culture in here? And then, all right, maybe I'm convinced a little bit more. I'm viewing as an admin, so it would view it like this. And then they might click through and go to the website, right? There's a website. Yeah. So that's kind of the journey that someone will take, if that's more, that kind of flow is more like if you are a company in-house, like if you're in-house talent or owner hiring for your company, if you're a recruiter, the kind of flow is the same, but the expectations are different because the expectation is they're going to go to like a staffing company page and they need to see that you place awesome high paying jobs. So a little bit different, but the process is the same there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you guys had on your company page a video, and more than 100 invites a week is more than enough. Right off the bat, I know you guys are about quality, not quantity. And I'm going to go look at that video. So
You were probably on that video.
Yes.
I said quality.
Any other panelists here? And since this is kind of a niche topic, if there's anyone here where you are a full-time recruiter and you want to chime in, I'd be happy to kind of make it an exception to the panelist rule if you want to chime in during panelist discussion. Anybody do that right now? Okay. All right, well, should we move it in? Let's move it into open Q&A. Anybody have any questions about, candidate pipeline, candidate pools, getting people talking? Let's try and keep the questions to under 30 seconds so we can make time for everyone. Shireen, you're first.
That it's interesting. I just had a question about, candidates looking into your reference point, Isaac, about the person who's standing outside looking for work and right behind them is somebody that's hiring, right, at a very decent rate. So my question is really around people who put in their news feed that they're looking for work, right? So I just wanted to get a perspective on what you think about that. Like, is that something that you would encourage people to do if they're looking for work, to actually put out, hey, like the person with the sign, I'm looking for work and, I'm looking to get hired, and how would a recruiter look at that, right? Do they look at that as the person that, oh, they're being proactive, or the person that's hanging out a sign going like, oh, okay, and maybe you're just not high quality? I don't know, just a thought, a
I
question.
think it's 100% contextual. It's like if you're a freelancer who's tired of the grind and you're ready to jump on the ship, like that's totally makes sense. If you are senior level, director, manager at a company and you're just whining and complaining, that's a turnoff. So I think it is really contextual. I hate to say it, but yeah. Oh, you're muted.
I'm going to throw into that too. I think it's lazy. I would never hire that person.
Okay.
And here's why, because you're out there saying, come to me, when number one, that post is only going to start to go to your network. Mm-hmm. So until somebody starts to comment and get on that. Number two, it's kind of victim mentality stance. You know what I mean? I'm out there and I need work, and it's kind of like, you don't see people out there posting for sales going, I need sales. And somebody, you know what I'm saying?
They do, but they're just more discreet about it.
It's just like, you got to form relationships and you got to show a little bit of spunk, if you would. I mean, that you can go out or gumption, whatever the word is, to go out and talk to people and form relationships. And why would you want somebody that's just going to stand there with a sign saying, can you hire me? Would you help me?
Yes, and I get your point in terms of the quote unquote victim thing. That's why when I see those posts come, I was like, okay, what is this? Right. And I'm just not there to, what is that word? Enable that, right? Like, come on, and so, but I just thought I'd throw it out since this is about recruiting, because I do see it every once in a while. I'm like, what is this? Right. So just a thought. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a great question, comment.
Any other questions? All right, we may have to wrap it up early today. It's fine with me. We've got a lot going on.
I think, how do you guys feel? Can I jump in real quick? How do you guys, I didn't even wait for an answer. How do you guys feel about employees using your employee network, like a company using their employee network to reach out to others that they think would be a good fit? I mean, they're on the inside, they know what the culture is. I mean, how
I think that the last person we hired, that was the route. So employee referrals are,
That's a good
to
route.
me, they're some of the absolute best,
Yeah.
for sure. Usually that tells me it's going to be a good cultural fit, probably a good skill fit, but I still need to do an interview where I ask questions to make sure they're a performer, because some people are really good at talking and suck at performing. So I think that to make that successful, your employees need to actually like working at your company, and you can sweeten the pot by doing an employee referral program to where you maybe, like, if you hire someone on, you pay in cash. I've experienced that in the past.
Yeah. So David was raising the finder's fee question there. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a question about content. What kinds of content do you use to draw in people for this kind of job offer or whatever, or any kind of job offer? I mean, there's a general issue about content, about drawing, getting attention, awareness, that kind of stuff, knowing that you get to be top of mind. But is there anything that you've found seems to draw more than less?
For a business that is hiring, so David, I think that there are two use cases here. I think there's a business that's hiring, and then there's a recruiting company that's hiring. And I think that each of those businesses, because of their offering and their goals, their content models kind of really change a lot. Like a recruiting company tends to err on the side of, look at this job, look at this job, look at this job, look at this job. And then people are like, oh my gosh, shut up. Whereas a business is like, that's not their revenue stream, like, so it's the same thing as if a business was like posting about, like, look what we do, look what we do, look what we do. People would be like, oh, shut up. So it's more like, if you're a business, it's like when you're hiring, you can share it. And I don't know.
I would think that a business would be more like, you would think of trying to draw somebody in by giving them a picture of your culture.
Yeah.
And growth opportunity within that particular job.
I do know, so like we work with corporate video companies, and one big thing there is doing storytelling of past hiring in video format. And so the storytelling of past hires, it can be very powerful there. If you have the ability to do video, it's even better. But again, a post kind of, you throw it out there and it lives and then it dies after a day. It's okay.
I think the other thing that's really important for companies that are doing ongoing hiring or looking for somebody that's like in the upper level, your C-suites or, managers of some kind, is for that leadership to have a presence themselves on LinkedIn and to talk about their leadership styles and what their vision for the company is and how they interact and work with people. So, whenever somebody's looking for a job, you made a great point. Is, you want to know what kind of culture you'll be going into, because not everybody's looking for a job based on just the highest price, because you can get a really lousy job, and be paid well. But some people, I think a lot of people, especially now after the lockdown and everything else, we've got this great reset in terms of, people and their jobs and how they want to go about finding their jobs and what they want to do. Is it's more about who they work with, what they believe in, what they believe the company is involved in, and how the leadership is going to interact with their employees and look at them as a value added asset, right? They're not looking for places where you're just going to come and punch a clock. So I think it's really important for leadership to have a presence on LinkedIn, talk about the things that are going to be important to people that are going to be looking for a job, but also things that are important to their current employees.
When I'm looking through the newsfeed and I see somebody that I know share that they're hiring and that they don't hate their job, like they're excited enough to be like, hey, just so everyone knows, we're hiring for this position. It's fun to work here. I stop for a moment and pause on those. That's me though.
Mhm.
So employee advocacy.
Shireen.
You know, just based off of this conversation, two things came up. So the first one is, you know, when I think about creating a storyboard, right? So it's for like when you talk about a candidate pipeline, Isaac, like that's a process. It's not immediate, but you're building a pipeline. And when I think about that in terms of David's question and creating a storyline, right? What's the storyline that would help build that pipeline on LinkedIn? I think that would be an amazing thing to see, right? Like you already know that you're building a pipeline. So what's the story behind, whether it's culture, whether it's leadership, whether it's, you know, other people that are talking about things? I think that would be phenomenal. Would love to see what people think about that. And the second thing is, what about the promotion portion, like promoting that, or the ads, you know, how to promoting your job that you're searching for. So just some thoughts about that. I don't know if people think that that's valid or not, but those are my two questions.
Isaac, you want to talk about ads?
Yeah. So man, hiring, like I said in the beginning, is such a big thing. You could spend all day talking about just paying to promote jobs. If we want to keep on target for LinkedIn, you can pay to play there on job posts. I think if you really need someone and you're getting good candidates, it's worth it to pay for that. I don't know that I would pay to like boost a post. I'd probably go the route of the job board post. That's probably what I would pay for in my experience. But that's all I'd really be able to speak to as far as paying to play for promotion on jobs. Anybody else?
I would actually consider boosting a post that was related to your culture and benefits, maybe, because you can do a little bit more through a post than you're going to do with, you know, an ad, so to speak. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I might try it. I never have. I mean, we haven't done that for clients, but it might, it might work. I don't know. If you're really wanting to focus on quality candidates over quantity candidates, I think that could be effective.
And probably depends on the revenue that the
Mhm.
position generates for your business. You know, like if I probably wouldn't pay to promote a job that's, you know, like doorman, you know, like
Mhm.
just because the revenue generator isn't as great. But if it's like your chief growth officer or somebody who their role literally fuels growth and profit, then it's just an ROI measure.
Awesome.
Any other questions before we wrap it up?
Not a question, but a statement here, Mr. Anderson. Yeah, just it's funny, kind of looking at this and realizing that this process is exactly the same as the sales process on
I know. Yeah,
on
you're just selling
LinkedIn.
a
It
job,
makes me
man.
want to go get a job there, I swear, because I think you could just crush it doing this. Because just like a lot of people just aren't understanding the value of LinkedIn and aren't searching for, you know, aren't getting out in front of their customers there. You know, as far as sales or business development on that side, like you said, for the executives, it's free. Why wouldn't you be talking about how great it is to work at your company, or doing, or you know, or you know, getting in front of those candidates? So when people do, you know, like in a sales situation, right? Like what I'm trying to do is, you know, when you're looking to change engineering tools, I want to be there and I want to have already had a conversation with you. When you want to change jobs, we're already sitting there and, you know, and we've had a conversation, or, you know, you've got a pretty good idea of, you know, what it, you know, of what it looks like to work at this company or that company, right? And then you kind of,
Mhm.
you know, it gives something for your recruiters, internal or external, to work off of too, right? You know, see how great, you know, Joe Schmo thinks our culture is here. Here's why you come work it, right? It's like you said, if the idea is to get people talking about stuff, you know, or thinking about stuff, or be aware of you, then you know, that seems like a pretty a pretty easy way to get that done. But like Shireen and I were talking about yesterday, and Monty, you and I talk about this all the time, is most corporate, content is just, the curated content is lame. Whether it's
Yeah.
for sales and business development or recruiting development, right? It's just, it is completely unengaging and uninspiring. And, it's, when you sit down and put together a program, it doesn't seem like it's that tough to do something a little bit interesting.
It's totally the truth. And, if you think back to the workflow or the playbook that Isaac showed, the funnel part where people are at, whether you're recruiting or in sales, you don't know where somebody is at in any level of that funnel without a conversation. But so much of that is accomplished through content. And if the head of companies and stuff engage in the content for those specific areas of the funnel, so much more valuable, because and on your company LinkedIn pages. Because if you're helping people work through that funnel on their own, which they're going to do, they don't need you to educate them. They're going to do that. It makes those conversations so much easier. And if they can educate themselves to where when you get on the phone with them or when you're messaging them, you can ask them specific questions to help understand where they are in that funnel, then you're way ahead.
And a good product is just easier to sell. So
Yeah.
sometimes your product is a position that you're selling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Good company. Yep.
No, it's funny. Monty, you and I were talking about Chris McLean last week, I think, right? And he's a recruiter, and his whole thing, and I've seen some others that are like this too, that are, get your next job without applying for a job, right? So
Yeah.
that's interesting to me. So I'll, hey, let me check this out. Now, I haven't seen his specific program, but my guess is it's something like the playbook that was just shown, right? That you're engaging with the content at the companies that you want to potentially go work for, and searching that out, right?
All jobs, most jobs are already awarded to people who the company knows and likes.
Yep.
So, the whole methodology for submitting applications, everybody like that, that's so old. I mean, if I were going to find a job today, I would not submit an application or send my resume to anybody. I would just work LinkedIn, go have conversations, and show somebody my value through having conversation through LinkedIn and getting on the phone with somebody. And by the way, for anybody looking for a job, going the route of just connecting with the HR person and hoping that they're going to form or start a conversation with you will not happen. So
there's this thing called a hiring manager, Monty. That's probably the person that you want to be talking to. But you reminded me of a great thing. So, when I first came on at Autodesk, and this was a few years ago, I worked there for over 15 years. I was a contractor at first. And I came in, I started in one group, I got loaned out to another group. I started doing sales for them, inside sales for them. I basically doubled the revenue that anybody else on the team had done, just coming in cold off the street 1 year, left the next February with no job, right? They basically had to let me go at the end of my contract. Well, they brought me back in April, but they had to post the job, right? And they had to interview people when there was nobody else besides me who was getting that job. And there must have been, this is about 2002, 2003 timeframe. So there must have been 40 or 50 different candidates, including a bunch of pretty good internal candidates. But it was like, now I got to go through the bullshit of the next month to
Sure.
interview some people and just string them along a little bit when that's not really going to happen for anybody else.
Yeah.
So something to remember when you're out there too, right? So
That's right.
if you're searching, is that a lot of those are like Monty says, they're already that position's already filled, right? They're just going through the motions.
Any final questions before we wrap it up? We got 3 minutes left. We're at 3 minutes to change your life.
I don't have a question, but in terms of the people who, like the executives that are not out there, they're not visible. I had a conversation yesterday with, a person that runs her own company. She's now on LinkedIn and she's a deer in the headlights. She has no skills in that area. And I think that sometimes that's probably one of the biggest factors that why you don't see quote unquote senior leadership or whatever out
Yep.
there, because they just don't
Sure.
know. It's like, man, I'm not going to make a fool of myself. I run this company, right?
Oh,
So
They're lame,
know.
Shereen. They're lame, their content's lame, and they should
it's like, oh
probably
man,
stay off
right?
until they know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a career-ending move. What do you mean?
It's very true. There's definitely a risk involved in it.
Yes.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
they need somebody to help them, right, get that thing going, and it was interesting because she's like, well, how much would it cost if you did this? I was like, oh, okay, that's a sales question. That's like an opportunity, right? So, but it was interesting because she was like, I have no idea what I'm doing here and I need some help, right? And so, but I just thought that I think that's a big factor that people are like, no, I would love to do it, but I have no idea, so I'm not going to do it. So yeah, even though it would be valuable for their company, so.
Sounds like a coaching opportunity, Shereen.
I know, a coaching opportunity, right? Okay, here you go. We're going to make your unique way to play here.
Awesome. Well, let's wrap it up here. We do have Judy Parsons is going to be sharing in a couple weeks, and then Mike O'Neill is going to be coming and sharing in April. So got some good, fun, diverse things. Mike wanted to speak on April 20th. So we'll see y'all next week. Take care.